Good morning. All right. So, kicking off, we're going to be talking and chatting a little bit more about mortgages. Do you have any questions, any burning questions, or things that you definitely want to make sure we touch on today? You can feel free to shout it out or drop it in the chat box, whatever is easier.
Maybe just like to what extent we need to know about mortgages, because I know that everyone talks to a mortgage lender. So I know there is obviously a certain amount that we need to know, but how much do we need to know?
Great question. So, you definitely need to know the right questions to ask. And that's what I'm hoping you'll get out of today's class. So, Melanie, can you share with me, what do you know about an FHA loan, which is a traditional, most first-time buyers do go with an FHA loan. Do you know anything? Do you have any insight? Have you ever heard of FHA before?
I've definitely heard of it. Isn't it that you need, is it 3.5%
Yeah,
down?
great job.
And I think that's literally all I know.
Yeah, no, that's a great start. So absolutely, with an FHA, they can put as low as 3.5% of the sale price. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Typically, with our FHA buyers, the reason an FHA loan is also appealing is because you can have a little bit lower of a credit score. So a good question to ask when you're working with a buyer, you don't have to get down to the nitty-gritty, but asking them if they have an idea of what their current credit score is. They may or may not know, and that's totally okay. You want to let them know that a mortgage lender, someone they're going to talk to get pre-approved, is going to want to check their credit score. And it may be different than what they're seeing on things like Credit Karma, or if they have anything like attached to their credit cards that gives them like their credit score, because the mortgage side uses different parameters than say like credit cards, or if you go and buy a car. So I just like to let people know that. If they don't know their credit score, that's totally okay. We're going to find out in this process, and it is totally free to get pre-approved. Now, when your clients have a stronger credit score, most of the time they're going to go and do what's called a conventional loan. Have you ladies ever heard of a conventional loan before? Okay. Who knows what's the minimum amount of money you can put down with a conventional loan? Any guesses?
5%, I believe.
Close. It actually is a little lower.
Okay.
With a conventional loan, you can put as low as 3% down.
Okay.
So FHA, the minimum is 3.5%. Conventional is 3%. Does anyone know what loan product a client could put 0% down?
They don't have to put anything down for a VA loan, right?
Correct. So if you are a veteran, if you served in the military, and that's any branch of the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, you do not have to put any money down if they qualify for the VA loan, the Veterans Affairs loan. So those are probably going to be the 3 most common loans that you're going to work with your clients. There's another one we sometimes see in more of the rural areas when people are buying farmland, which is called a USDA. But traditionally in the city, you're going to see a lot of FHA, conventional, and VA loans. So I'm going to share you guys my screen so I can show you this page. You guys see this picture, the mortgage one-on-one? So
Yes.
we had Josh from the Mortgage Collective on last week, and he shared this page with us, and I can share it with you guys as well, so you have a PDF version. But this is really nice because it kind of breaks it down for you guys, so you don't have to remember everything. But this is, I would say, Melanie, like the basics, right? So you should know conventional minimum down 3.5% to 5%, and FHA is 3.5%. We're not going to touch on this today, but there are things called a 203K loan that has to do with improvements. So if someone's buying a house that needs work on it, they can apply for what's called a 203K. VA, you'll see a 0% down, and USDA, which is that eligible area. Typically it's more farmland. They also have a minimum 0% down, but it must be in a USDA eligible area. Just like with VA, only veterans can get the VA. And if they're buying a condo, the condo building must be VA approved. Same thing with FHA. If somebody is buying a condo with an FHA loan, the condo, not just like the little house that they're the unit, but the actual entire building, the HOA has to fill out paperwork, and it has to be what's called FHA approved. So if you're working with a buyer and they want to buy a condo, and you know that they're going to need to go FHA because their credit score is maybe so-so, where they've gone through the pre-approval and the lender tells you that here's the pre-approval letter for an FHA loan. If they are looking for a condo, it needs to be an FHA approved condo. And if you're not sure, you always want to double check with the lender about different condo buildings. Make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Any questions about this little breakdown? And
Maybe
this is
could you
yeah,
okay, could you explain the seller's assist part?
absolutely. So what do you guys know about seller's assist?
It's money that's paid on the seller side to assist the buyer with the closing costs and down payment.
Absolutely. So this is money that the seller is essentially giving to the buyer on the settlement sheet. So what does that mean? That means less cash that the buyer needs to bring to settlement. So let's use some real numbers. So let's say you have a client that's buying a house and their total down payment plus closing costs is going to be $20,000. And you negotiate in your agreement of sale that the seller is going to provide a $10,000 seller's assist. So now, instead of your client needing to bring $20,000 to settlement, they will only need to bring $10,000. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the market we're in right now, it's super competitive, and we're seeing a lot of multiple bids and houses, going under contract in a very short period of time. And when that happens, the seller has the advantage in being able to choose kind of whatever offer they want. In those situations, sellers tend not to be as interested in offers with seller's assist. Why do you think that is? If you're a seller and you have multiple offers, why might you not be as interested in an offer with seller's assist?
Because they know that they could probably get an offer without seller's assist because they have so many offers.
Exactly. Now, there may be a house sitting on the market for, let's say, 30 days that has not received any offers. Do we think that seller might be a little bit more open to an offer with seller's assist?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So our sellers care most traditionally about what's called the net profits. This is the amount of money that they are going to get a check for at settlement. It's the sale price minus any deductions or taxes, minus their mortgage that they have on the property. And then we get what's called net profits. Does that make sense? So to a seller, sometimes all they care about is that net profit number. And that's a good question to ask your sellers when you're talking to them and working on a listing appointment, right? So rather than say, what price do you want to sell your house at? What's the amount of net profits you're hoping to walk away with? Is probably a better question, because that's what they really care about. How much money are they going to be able to put in their pocket? So when we're working with buyers and we talk to them and they tell us they have very little cash in the bank, that's probably a client that might need seller's assist. Because we know when somebody buys a house, they're going to need money for their down payment, as well as a few other things. What are some other things that happen in a real estate transaction that a buyer needs money for?
The inspection. They don't pay for the appraisal, right? Do they pay for the appraisal? Okay.
Yep. Yep. And typically you have to pay for the appraisal up front, not at settlement.
And like other closing costs, so like transfer of title, do they pay for that?
Yeah, absolutely. They pay
Okay.
for that at settlement. Yep.
Okay. And isn't there something transfer of title, and isn't there something with taxes?
Yep.
Yeah.
What do we do when we get a contract and we get it signed? Is there any other money that the buyer might have to pay?
I
Oh, their
forget the
earnest
name.
money deposit.
Yeah. So they might have some earnest money deposits. So it's going to vary, right? Our earnest money deposit will vary depending upon the price point of the house, as well as how much cash our client has in the bank. But some things probably are not going to change. Typically, a home inspection, we have a decent idea of what the home inspection is going to be. It might vary if it's a 500 square foot condo versus a 3,000 square foot single family home. And there may be additional inspections they want to do, right? So if you notice on the agreement of sale, there's a few different contingencies that they can either elect or waive. Some of the ones that they can elect are home and property. There's also one called termite or wood destroying insects. Have you guys ever heard of that term before? There's a few other ones. Can you guys think of any other inspections that a buyer might elect to do?
Is it radon?
Yeah.
Okay. That one. Can't think of any others right now.
That's okay. So have you guys ever heard of a sewer inspection?
I have not.
Okay, so that's where a inspector or a plumber actually puts a camera down the sewer line. And they usually do this by removing a toilet and then putting a camera down the toilet through the pipes. And they can check the sewer line to make sure there's no cracks or wood roots or any issues with the sewer line, because we know there might not be a problem today, but there could be a problem in the future, and those can be pretty costly. So all of these little things can add up, as well as out of pockets. So again, how to be really helpful and resourceful to our clients to make sure we're talking to them about the money that they're going to need to buy a home. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not going to buy a home for at least a year from now. Well, that's great. We should do a buyer consult and let me educate you on all the things you're going to need money for. Because typically the regular consumer doesn't think about these things, especially if they're a first-time home buyer that has never gone through this process. So having the ability to talk to them when they're calm and they're not on a time crunch is going to be really, really helpful. Most consumers have the idea that they need at least 20% to buy a home. So 20% of the sale price. So if the sale price for a home is $300,000, they think they need to save $60,000 before they could even consider buying a home. And we know that's not the case. We know with an FHA, they could get 3.5% down, or conventional at a 3% down. Or if they're a veteran, 0% down. But if we can educate our clients on the cash that they're going to need throughout the whole process, we're going to be a really resourceful tool for them. There's some other things that we also want to educate our clients on. And that has to do with things that they should or should not do while they're going through this pre-approval process. Can you guys think of anything that you should not do if your client says, I think I want to buy a home, and you're starting the home search? What are some things the buyer should not do?
Buy a car, run up their credit card bills, co-sign on a loan for some other person.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll share this sheet with you guys. And again, I can send this to you as well. So these are some do's and don'ts. So Dorian mentioned some of these. So we don't want to make large deposits into the bank account, such as, you know, a friend gave us $5,000 cash and there's like no clear explanation why that large deposit was put into your bank account. We don't want to pay off debts, collections, or charge-offs during the mortgage process. So anytime you're going to do anything related to your credit cards, you want to make sure you talk to your loan officer first. Don't purchase your earnest money deposit with cash in hand. So this is why we ask our clients to either wire their earnest money deposit or get what's called a certified bank check. So we can take a picture and show that we had money in account, we got a check, and we have a copy of that check, and we're giving it to the listing broker to hold the escrow deposit. We want to make sure we tell them, do not apply for any new credit cards, right? Don't go to Macy's and open a new credit card. We don't want to be transferring money all around, right? We don't want to deposit cash into your account because then we're going to have questions, right? The underwriter for the mortgage lender is going to be like, where did this money come from? We don't want to close any credit cards. And we don't want to change anything about your current employment. This is super, super important. So changing jobs, being laid off, taking medical leave can have a bad effect on your client being able to qualify for a mortgage. So a good question to ask our clients that are starting to think about buying might be, do you plan on staying in your job for the next year? If you hear them say things like, oh, I'm interviewing for a new job, or I'm thinking about changing companies, time out. We might want to have a conversation about that. The other thing is don't max out or overcharge your existing credit cards. We want to try and keep our credit cards below 50% of the available credit limit. So if our credit card limit is $10,000, what is that 50% that we need to keep it below?
Five. You said 50%?
Yep. So
Wow.
we want to try and keep those credit cards below 50% of the credit limit, which would be 5. Now, here are some things that also we want to share with the clients that they should be doing. So they should tell us of any changes in employment, layoffs, terminations, raises. They should share anything important. Nothing, don't think that something is not important. Car accidents and a new car is needed, taking time away due to family matters, anything that changes their current situation that could affect their debt, their income, or their assets, you want them to make sure they're telling the mortgage lender. Anytime a mortgage person is asking them for documents, it's really helpful if you support the lender and letting your clients know they need documents back as soon as possible. The longer it takes your client to get the lender documents, it can delay the mortgage process. They should stay current on all their current existing accounts, so making sure they're paying their credit cards on time, their rent on time. Any negative impact can really hurt their credit score and their ability to buy a house. They should keep records of all deposits in their accounts, because the lender is going to need to know like where this money is coming from if it's not their like traditional pay. They should feel really comfortable in calling the loan officer, right? So anytime that they call them, they need to answer the phone, and vice versa. If they have questions, they should really feel comfortable talking to that loan officer. So if you introduce them to a loan officer and maybe you see they're not quite clicking, you might need to reintroduce them to a new loan officer. It's really important that personalities match, right? So if you have somebody that's maybe very shy and very timid and soft-spoken, having a loan officer that's very like aggressive and dominant might not be the best fit for that person. You do want to make sure that they maintain a paper trail of everything connected to their application, and that their current files with pay stubs and bank accounts, are up to date. You want to make sure they tell us of any changes in their funds, and do check in with emails daily if they have any questions. So highly recommend. Josh is one of our in-house loan officers. He is a wealth of knowledge, so you can definitely leverage Josh if you do have any questions. So we went over FHA, conventional, and VA, which are probably some of the more popular loans. Now, sometimes certain loans have a bad reputation, right? You guys ever heard that? Like some loans are not as appealing as other loans. Have you heard any of those kind of things?
Yeah, I
Yes.
have.
What are some things people are saying?
Maybe just like one is more complicated than the other one.
Yeah, so the truth is no loan is more complicated than any other loan. It's really about how knowledgeable your loan officer is. So as a realtor, it's really important that you have one-on-one meetings with the loan officers. So number one, you get to know them and you get to find out what are their strengths, right? So ask them, have you closed FHA loans? Have you closed conventional loans? What type of client do you prefer working with? What type of loan products, do you not carry? This will help you determine who is the best lender for your particular client. If you know your client is an FHA, their credit's so-so, and they need a loan officer that can really handhold them and stay on top of them and be really encouraging, you want to make sure you find a loan officer that knows that up front. FHA loans are no different than conventional or VA. It really is all about the experience of the loan officer and what's called the underwriter. So the underwriter is the person that works with the loan officer that kind of gets into the nitty-gritty details of all the paperwork and the file. So one question I like to ask my mortgage advisors is, are your underwriters in-house? Meaning, are they local? By having somebody that is local means that you're on essentially, hopefully, like the same time zone, where some companies have their underwriters like in California. So if I need something at 8 a.m., well, I know California is 4 hours behind us, so it's 4 a.m. there. So chances are I'm not getting an answer right at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But an FHA loan, conventional, and VA loan are processed exactly the same. When you have a confident loan officer that really knows the product really well, the process is super simple. One thing I encourage you guys to do is when you are submitting an offer, make sure you are CCing your loan officer on the offer to the listing agent. That way they're already looped in with the offer and can already immediately reach out to that listing agent to talk on your client's behalf about your client's background, their finances, and how well qualified they are for this purchase. So some things that make them a little bit different. With an FHA, because traditionally the buyer does put less money down and does have a lower credit score, the FHA appraiser is very concerned about safety issues of the house. So you will traditionally find in an FHA, the appraiser is going to call out things like smoke detectors, carbon monoxide, handrails on stairs, chip paint, or any kind of damage to the house, because they know the buyer doesn't have a lot of extra cash to fix these things. Does that make sense to everybody? So for you as a realtor, if you're touring a client through a house and you know that they're an FHA buyer, what are some things that you want to make sure you're noticing when you're touring someone through the house?
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So if you're working with an FHA buyer, what are some things that you should be noticing when you're touring someone through a house if you know they're getting an FHA loan?
I guess paying attention to some of the things that might come up in home inspection.
Yeah, what are some of those things?
Like ceilings and windows and walls and things of that nature, like big structural things.
Yeah. Smoke detectors, right? Are there smoke detectors? Are the handrails secure? Right? Is there any chip paint anywhere on the outside or on the inside of the house? Right? So any of the things that an appraiser might call out as safety issues, take notice of that. Same thing with a VA. So something that's really important and a little bit different, if you have a buyer that is getting a VA loan, so that's the veterans loan, right? They were in the military. The seller or you as the buyer's agent needs to pay for the termite inspection. The buyer is not allowed to pay for the termite inspection and treatment. So really important that, you know, you're conscious of that. And that is in Josh's little handout. So I'll make sure that you guys have that too. Just a good thing to kind of be mindful of. There's also a document that we ask our buyers to fill out. It's called the BFI. You guys know what BFI stands for?
Buyer financial information.
Yes. Great job, Sneha. So the buyer's financial information sheet, I like to give this in the beginning when I'm first starting to work with them, so they have time to fill it out and ask me any questions. Why do we think it's helpful to have a buyer fill out a BFI?
I feel they kind of,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
just I believe they can start understanding what they need to do more than, you know, be prepared for buying a home process, you know. I mean, first, that's the first thing. Of course, it's an information that will help you to understand and guide them through the process, or they have all the documents ready to go to the mortgage lender.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen. I want to make sure you guys know. So if we go to the dashboard, right, agentskWphiladelphia.com, and we come down here to the PA forms, it'll bring us to all these PDF documents. And there's one called the Buyer's Financial Information Sheet, BFI. So this is what the sheet actually looks like. You'll see it asks for the client's name and address, and also some great questions. So again, what questions should we be mindful of or possibly be asking our clients? Number one is a really good one. Do you plan on occupying the premise, right? Is this going to be an owner-occupied house, something that they're going to live in as their primary home? Or is this going to be an investment property that maybe they're going to put tenants in? Traditionally, when people buy something that is an investment property, they must put 20% down. If it is going to be their primary home, that's where they can put the 3.5% for FHA or 3% for conventional down. So in this, we're going to have our client fill out these questions. And you'll see the next section talks about their assets. So this is bank accounts, money that they have liquid, right? Cash in a bank, things that they have easy access to. The next part asks them about liabilities. So these are things that they probably pay on a monthly basis. Things like alimony or child support or credit cards or car payments. The next section asks them if they currently own any real estate. If they're a first-time home buyer, most likely they will not have anything to fill out here. And you'll see they need to initial that first page. The second page is going to ask them about their employment. So where do they currently work? What is their job title? And how many years have they been at that job? If they've only been at a job for, say, 6 months, they should write in 6 months. And also some past employers. Then it wants to know what is their annual income. So their base salary, if they get any overtime, if they receive any bonuses or commissions, they should put all of that information here. Then you'll see there's a section that says additional information. What are some things a buyer might possibly put under additional information?
If someone else is helping them purchase a home, or
Absolutely. Yeah. So their parents are going to be a co-signer, or if they're receiving something called gift money, right? Their parents are giving them money towards their down payment. I would also encourage you to have them write down if they're getting any kind of grant money. So there are some first-time homebuyer grant programs. So if they are getting grant money from the city or a lender-specific kind of program, to put that information down. And then you'll see they sign at the very bottom and date. So there's some really important stuff written here in bold. One thing it says is that the buyer affirms that the above information is true and correct. Because we know sometimes people don't always disclose everything, right? They're not always truthful. They need to be truthful in this document. It also says the buyer understands that the information may be used as a basis to accept or reject the offer by the seller. This is why it's so important that we disclose as much information as possible. If your client only fills out on this document that they only have, say, $5,000 in their bank account, and they have a ton of different bills, $500 car payment, $600 student loan payment, and for their employment, they make very little amount of money. Say they only make $20,000 a year. A seller is going to look at this and be like, this person can't afford this house. But if you put down in the additional information, your client writes that they're getting gift money, right, of $50,000, or they have a co-signer that's a parent, that's going to make a seller feel much more comfortable and confident about this buyer. I would encourage you, if your client is getting a co-signer, like a parent, they should also fill out the BFI. That could be buyer number 2, or they could do a whole separate BFI, whatever easier. Any questions about the BFI?
I have a question. I had an open house on Saturday evening and afternoon, and I had a lady who walked in. She looked like a very savvy person, knew what she was doing, but she kind of mentioned about all these grants, and it kind of threw me off, because not that she was interested in the property or anything, but she mentioned something that I had no idea. That there are some grants that they are getting through the city that they like. I couldn't understand what she said totally, because she just like said it in a sentence, didn't specify anything. I'm waiting for the grants to approve, my money to come in. Are these grants through city, and how and who can apply for these?
So, great question. There are many different grants, and it really depends on the individual situation. So probably, with knowing very little information, she's probably talking about a grant called First Front Door, which is a grant program by the city of Philadelphia. Anybody can apply. You must be a first-time home buyer, which means you cannot have your name on a deed on any property currently. And you cannot have your name on a deed or a property within the past 3 years.
Mhm.
There's also some income restrictions, meaning you can't make over a certain amount of money.
Mm.
And sometimes it also depends on specific neighborhoods. So you can only use the money in certain neighborhoods.
So is Fishtown a certain neighborhood? Like that's is like a very upcoming neighborhood, but is that like a opportunity zone by any chance or?
Possibly. What typically happens though, because the price point is so high in Fishtown right now,
Mhm.
usually it won't qualify because you have to make a certain amount of money to qualify for that big of a loan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. She said something about the government. It seems like she did not have that income to qualify, and I think she was trying to get that money, and she was trying to stay within on the budget. And this property was one of the ones that I think fell in her price point compared to other ones.
Yeah. So I would encourage you, anytime somebody brings up any kind of grant, ask them which grant are you applying for? Because there's a few different ones out there. There's also certain grants that are offered by different lenders that are sometimes a better option for buyers.
Mm. Okay.
So my understanding with the first front door, there's a limited amount of money available for this grant program. So once they run out of money, that's it. No more grants are offered that year. The other thing is this grant money, they typically have to take a course and go through like an interview process. That has to happen before they find a house, before they go under contract.
Right.
And then that money is kind of like set aside for them for X number of days.
Mm.
But if they do utilize this grant program, you need to make sure that the loan officer is aware, because that has to get tied into the mortgage process. So you typically cannot close in 30 days because the lender has to also cooperate with the city to make sure that they get all the paperwork.
Correct.
So I would always recommend that you're giving yourself at least a 60-day close period.
Okay.
So from, if you're submitting an offer today, settlement should be 60 days from now. So we're in March, so April, May. You can always move settlement up sooner. It sometimes can get complicated if you have to keep pushing it back.
Correct.
The other part with the grant programs, and this is why it's important to know which program your client may be applying for, is also whether or not that money ever needs to be paid back. Now, with the first front door, it's actually put on as a lien on the property. So if your client ever rents or sells the property, they need to pay that money back to the city. So again, it's really important that you understand which loan program they're applying for so that you can help better educate them. Because unfortunately, what's happening is the general public, the consumers, are just hearing, hey, there's a grant program, you can get $10,000. They don't fully understand exactly how to apply and also what happens during that process and if they ever have to pay that money back.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. So Sneha, what might be a good question you might ask if you ever incur somebody that says that they're getting grant money?
First, as you said, ask them what grant money and whether they have been through the process and are they already having a confirmation of that money coming in, because just touring the properties won't help unless we have the finance in place. So yeah, I would, at least those two comes to my mind right away.
absolutely. So step one, which grant are you applying for? Or, find out exactly which one. And then I would encourage you, if you don't know anything about that, Google it. You all have these little computers at your hands to type in whatever grant money they say they're getting and just quick do a search and read about it really fast. You can always
the property that, yeah. I was like, now that you're talking, I kind of realized that, okay, there's some grants. She mentioned it. She said it to me because when she asked me, so what do you think, how long this property is on the market? This property was sitting on market for like over 90 days. I'm like, make an offer, right? And they said, no, I have to wait for this money to come. And that's like when I stopped and I said, I don't know what she's talking about at all. Like, I had no idea.
Yeah, so that's a great opportunity to say, awesome, what program are you applying for?
Mhm.
How far along are you in the process? Because you'll find some people haven't even started the process. They could be halfway through, or maybe they've already completed it, right? So it's good for you to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So we have about 10 minutes left. Are there any other questions or anything you guys want to go back over that we discussed so far today?
Can you go over PMI and the difference between PMI for FHA loan and PMI for a conventional? Well, there's no PMI for a conventional, right?
No, there absolutely is.
Okay.
So PMI is private mortgage insurance. Dorian, do you know why would a loan have PMI?
I'm not sure. My assumption is just to have it like backed, like just in case something happens, they have that PMI.
Yep. Do you know when a loan does not have PMI?
Once they get to, is it 20%? Like once they've paid off 20% of their mortgage?
Yep. So if a buyer puts 20% down,
Okay.
that's 20% of the sale price down at settlement. There is traditionally no private mortgage insurance placed on their loan. But if you're like most people, you don't have 20% sitting in your bank account. So for example, me personally, when I bought my first home, when I bought my second home, I didn't have 20%. So conventional loan, I'm going to put 3% down and buy my home. We're going to have something called private mortgage insurance. It's an additional payment that's built into my monthly mortgage payment. And once I get 20% equity in my home, or if I refinance my home because the value of my home has gone up significantly, I can get that PMI removed. Now, with an FHA loan, it never falls off. You will always have private mortgage insurance if you do not put 20% down, unless for some reason a buyer puts 11% down when they buy their home. Then once it gets to be 20%, you can ask for an appraisal. And if you have 20% in value, then it can be taken off. What I will tell you, most people will either refinance or sell their home within 5 to 8 years. I would not worry about private mortgage insurance, because when we look at how much money it is on a monthly basis over 5 years, it's minimal. I really can't tell you that I know anybody that has kept the same loan for 30 years. So private mortgage insurance, if you are not putting 20% down, you do typically have private mortgage insurance built into your monthly mortgage payment. The only product that does not have that is the VA loan because it's backed by the government. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm going to show you guys too, because I think this might be helpful. Whenever you're working with a buyer and they're interested in a certain property, you're searching for that property on Bright. And on Bright, you can actually do a buyer's estimate of closing costs. And I encourage you guys to do this. So we'll look up a property. Does anyone have a property they want me to look up or something you have toured recently?
Mine is closed. I don't know if that makes a difference. Like it's in Bright, but it's closed.
Okay, go ahead. What's yours?
8634 Bayard, Bayard Street.
Search. Eight, 6, 3, 4. If I could type. Go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So you'll see that there's a $B and an $S. So if I'm working with a buyer and they're interested in this property and I click on the $B, I can manipulate different areas in this chart and it'll help me kind of figure out some details for my buyer. So anything with this red star must be filled out. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly just because what I'm most concerned with is showing you the stuff on the side. So let's just say this was for a 60-day settlement. Their interest rate for their loan was 4%, and they were going to put $5,000 down. You'll see it'll ask me the loan type. So let's say they were going to do a conventional loan, and I can see my minimum down payment. It'll default to the 3.5%. And the only thing I always recommend is you guys put in that broker fee, that $395, as well as homeowners insurance. Typically, I put $1,200. That's about $100 a month. Good opportunity to learn about homeowners insurance is to connect with Sean in our office. He's our in-house insurance guy. So you guys can learn more about homeowners insurance. When I fill all this stuff out, you'll see it'll break me down some information. And we see right here something called mortgage insurance. That's that private mortgage insurance because we're only putting 3.5% down, not 20%. So every month, the buyer's going to pay $177 towards their mortgage insurance. Now you'll see if I change this, let's say they did a conventional loan at 20%, all of a sudden I have zero mortgage insurance. That makes sense? Now, going back to the FHA, 3.5%, what I love is it breaks down how much cash they need to purchase, as well as how much cash they need to bring to settlement, because this takes into account their down payment, right? That earnest money deposit, as well as any like prepaid services. So when I'm talking to a client, right, and I ask them to fill out the BFI and it shows me under assets that they have $20,000 in cash and they want to buy this house FHA with 3.5% down, I can see that they need to save up a little bit more money before they can actually buy this house. So the good question to ask them is, if they filled out the BFI and they put $20,000 in cash, a good question to ask them might be, where are you going to come up with the extra $3,000 that you're going to need to buy this house? Now, remember, this does not take into account money for home inspection, appraisal, right? So utilizing that BFI document is going to help you have really good conversations and to be able to educate your client. So I literally like to do either a Zoom, or I do this in person with my clients. I go through the sheet with them and I show them, well, here it tells us that you're going to need $22,216 if you want to buy this home. On your BFI, it says you only have $20,000 in your bank account right now. So where are we going to come up with that, the difference? Any questions about this sheet? Have you guys ever played with this sheet before in Bright?
I've only seen
No,
it.
I have not.
Yeah, I haven't played with it.
Okay, I highly encourage you to. Can't mess anything up. So again, you can pull up any listing and go to the $B sign and then just play around and change with some of the numbers. Going back to our original question when we first started today was about seller's assist. So let's say if this house, we were able to negotiate $10,000 of seller assist, you'll see now our cash needed to change has changed. I'm sorry, our cash needed to buy has changed. It was 22 and now it's 12, because you'll see here, now we've added in that seller's assist for $10,000. And again, if we take that away, it goes back to the client needing 22,000. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any other questions you guys have today? No such thing as a silly question.
I have one question, Dana. The construction loan that was, I think we even discussed that in the last phone call. I want to know, is only the FHA allowed, or can this be done with conventional loan as well?
The 203K can be
Yeah,
done with
203K.
conventional. I would highly encourage you to have a one-on-one with Josh. Have you had an opportunity to do that, Sneha?
No, I have not.
Okay, I would highly encourage you to have a one-on-one with Josh to learn more about it.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining today. If you have any other questions or need anything, please let us know. And I hope you guys have a great day.